The air up there was so cold, it burned. At 18,000 feet over wartime Europe, the wind clawed at every seam of the aircraft, shaking metal like a living thing. Inside a Royal Air Force Lancaster bomber, the noise was not just loud, it was violent. Engines roared, guns rattled, alarms screamed, and somewhere in that chaos, a young air gunner named Nicky Alkemade, a flight sergeant in the RAF, realized something terrifying in one simple second.
If you want more content like this, subscribe now and comment below.
The aircraft was dying, and the sky beneath him was about to swallow everything. It was the night of 24th March, 1944, and the bomber was returning from a raid over Germany. The Lancaster had been out in the dark for hours, flying through enemy territory where the air itself felt hunted. Searchlights and flak had been bad enough, but the real killers were the night fighters, fast, silent, and deadly, slipping into the bomber stream like wolves. As the Lancaster crossed toward home, a German Junkers Ju-88 night fighter closed in. The attack came sudden and brutal. Cannon fire ripped into the bomber's rear. The fuselage shuddered. Sparks exploded inside the aircraft. And then fire began to spread. You can almost feel what that moment is like. The heavy smell of fuel, hot oil, and smoke choking the narrow space. The back of the Lancaster, where the rear gunner sat, became a furnace. Ammunition cooked off with sharp cracks. The heat was so intense, it felt like the air itself was on fire. Alkemade, trapped near the tail section, fought to escape. But in that cramped, burning maze of metal, the normal path to safety was gone. Flames blocked routes. Smoke blinded him. The aircraft was breaking apart, while still high above the ground. In training, every airman learned the rule. If you have to bail out, you go fast. You grab your parachute, clip in, and you jump. But war doesn't care about rules. In Alkemade's corner of the aircraft, the fire closed in so quickly that he couldn't reach his parachute. Even worse, the parachute itself was likely already burning or unreachable behind the flames. The Lancaster was turning into a falling torch, and staying inside meant being burned alive before he ever hit the ground. The cold truth hit him with total clarity. He had two choices, and both felt impossible. Die in the flames or jump with no parachute at all. That isn't bravery in the clean, heroic way people like to imagine. It's pure survival. It's panic, instinct, and a mind racing so fast it almost goes quiet. Alkemade didn't have time to pray, argue, or think it through. The heat was already destroying the aircraft around him. His oxygen was gone. His lungs were pulling smoke. His skin felt like it was being roasted. So he made the only choice left. He went to an opening in the aircraft and threw himself into the night. The moment he left the Lancaster, everything changed. The roar of the engines vanished, replaced by the screaming rush of freefall. The freezing air slammed into him like a wall. Above, the bomber burned like a falling star, breaking apart as it plunged. Below, the world was a black void. No ground, no horizon, only darkness. At 18,000 feet, you don't fall into the earth. You fall into space. And the speed builds so fast, your body doesn't understand what's happening. You can almost imagine his thoughts in those seconds, not as a long speech, but flashes. This is it. This is where I end. There was no parachute to open, no reserve, no miracle cord to pull. Just gravity taking him down, faster and faster, with the wind ripping tears from his eyes. The cold stabbed through his uniform. His limbs were numb, not from calm, but from the sheer shock of it all. Then came the part no one could explain. Instead of slamming into hard ground, Alkemade dropped into something different, something that gave way. Beneath him was a thick canopy of pine trees, part of a wooded area near Schmallenberg, in what is now North Rhine-Westphalia. The branches caught him like giant hands, snapping and bending under the force. He tore through layers of pine needles and limbs, each one stealing a little speed. And the treetops didn't stop him, but they slowed him just enough. And beneath those trees was another unlikely cushion. Deep, soft snow, piled in the forest like a white mattress in the darkness. The impact still should have killed him. It should have shattered everything. But the trees, the snow, and the angle of his fall turned a certain death into something else, something almost impossible. When the pain hit, it was sharp and total, but he was still alive. His body had taken damage, yes, but not the kind that ends a man instantly. He lay there, surrounded by broken branches, snow, and silence, hearing only his own breath. And then this is the part that turns the story from incredible to unreal. He moved. He didn't float. He didn't drift down like a feather. He didn't get dragged out by rescuers. He stood up. Imagine trying to stand after falling from the height of a mountain. Yet Alkemade forced himself upright, shaking, confused, and hurting. He had injuries. Later, it would be found he suffered a badly sprained leg and other trauma, but he could walk. And in that frozen forest, under enemy skies, he began to move through the snow, looking for anything, anyone, some sign he hadn't landed in a nightmare. Not long after, German soldiers found him. In that area, the air defenses and local units were on alert. They had seen the burning aircraft come down. They expected to find bodies, wreckage, maybe survivors with parachutes. But what they saw was a man who looked like he'd crawled out of the sky itself. A British airman, alive, with no parachute in sight. The Germans were stunned. They searched him, checked the area, and questioned what they were seeing. An airman from an RAF bomber had fallen from 18,000 feet and was standing right in front of them. The first assumption was obvious. He must be lying. Maybe he had a parachute and hid it. Maybe it failed to open, but slowed him. Maybe he jumped from lower altitude. But the truth didn't change no matter how they tested it. When they went back and later examined the wreckage, they found his parachute pack burned inside the aircraft. That was the final proof. He had jumped without it. He had done something that should never have ended in a living man. Alkemade became a prisoner of war, but even there, his story spread fast. German interrogators documented it because they couldn't ignore it. Guards talked about it. Other prisoners heard whispers. In the middle of a world filled with death, and this one event felt like the war briefly broke its own rules. It wasn't magic. It wasn't invincibility. It was a brutal chain of luck, trees, snow, and the way the human body sometimes survives what it has no right to survive. But don't mistake luck for weakness, because the moment inside that Lancaster, when the flames closed around him, was still real courage. Not the loud kind, the quiet, desperate kind, the kind that doesn't get speeches or medals in the moment, the kind where a man makes a decision in half a second, because the alternative is being erased by fire. And here's the haunting part. Alkemade wasn't the only one in that aircraft. The Lancaster's crew was fighting their own battles in that burning machine. Some tried to bail out. Others never had the chance. The sky that night took almost everything, but it didn't take him. It dropped him into trees and snow like a cruel joke, then dared him to survive it. When the war ended and Alkemade returned home, his story became one of those rare legends that is completely true. Not a rumor, not a myth, a documented event from a real man in a real war. A flight sergeant who fell from 18,000 feet, landed in a German forest, and got back up on his own legs. The kind of story that makes you rethink what the human body can endure and what the human mind can force itself to do when there is no other door left open. So the next time you imagine air combat in World War II, don't only picture dogfights and explosions. Picture this instead: a man alone in the freezing night, falling through darkness without a parachute, the wind screaming in his ears, the ground rushing up like fate itself, and somehow, is against every law of survival, he lives. Because in war, sometimes the most unbelievable victories aren't on the battlefield. Sometimes they happen in the space between fire and earth, where one man refuses to die.
If you want more content like this, subscribe now and comment below.